Hey guys, Troy Francis coming at you from a beautiful morning in Lisbon in Portugal, and here's the deal, right? There are too many guys talking about the good of society, okay, trademark, the good of society in the men's online space, and not enough guys who are talking about individualism, okay? Why is it that men online will get berated all the time about doing the right thing for the good of future generations or the good of society or, you know, any of this kind of nonsense, and very, very little talk about what is good for you as an individual, okay? And I've always been an individualist primarily. I mean, yeah, of course, you know, I care about society up to a point. I mean, I didn't really ask to be here, but, you know, I guess since I am here, I've got to care about it up to a point. But I'm also somewhat self-interested. I don't think that's a really bad thing. I think actually, if you look at something like Robert Greene, for example, who's one of my favorite writers, and is also very influential in this whole space, it's really about individualism, okay? It's about, okay, so what are the strategies and the techniques I can use to get the best for me and for my own, okay? So that might be my family, it might be my girlfriend, it might be, you know, whatever, my wife or whatever. It's not so much about, oh, what can I do to help society, to help the children, you know, and all this kind of thing. And it's kind of funny, isn't it? Because we inhabit a space that is largely right-wing, or there's certainly a very dominant right-wing strain in the space, and yet some of the rhetoric around this stuff is almost, I don't want to say communist, but it's almost it's very left-leaning in some ways, because it's very much about like, oh, the good of the society, the good of the commune, and not the good of the individual. Well, I say, fuck the community. I mean, what about the good of you as an individual? And this is why I always say, think about what you actually want. And there's a serious point to this. I'm not just trying to be provocative here. There is a serious point to this, because look, you know, you got some arsehole on Twitter who's got like 25,000 followers or whatever, and he's saying things like, oh yeah, you know, it's the right thing for a man to do is to settle down young and find a good woman and make her his wife and have 15 kids and go and live in a cabin in Montana. You know, there's this, what they call TRADCONs, right? There's this traditionalist rhetoric that's out there that is influential to a lot of people. You know, a lot of young guys are gobbling this stuff up, and it seems to be completely fucking insane, since we know, on the other hand, what the divorce rates are like. We know what the infidelity rates are like. We know that monogamy is, whether or not it's natural is a moot point, but we certainly know that it's not very easy for human beings, because we quite like novelty, particularly men, but women as well. We quite like novelty. We like the next shiny bright thing. There is more sexual opportunity out there than there ever has been before. Okay, so, you know, you shack up with somebody, with a woman, and it is extremely easy for her to be swayed by the attention of other men, and there's no real incentive for her not to go down that route if she wants to, you know, to go and have an affair, or to indeed to leave you for somebody else. So in a way, when you look at the reality of it, we live in the very, very worst time for getting into a long-term committed relationship, and I am skeptical anyway that it was ever really the right thing or the most comfortable thing for human beings to do. I think short-term relationships, and when I say short-term, I'm talking anything up to about 3 years, something like that. Yeah, great, monogamy's great, okay? When it gets beyond that, and this is something that the blogger Black Dragon used to talk about, Caleb Jones, he's got his YouTube channel, used to talk about this a lot. The real hard yards of monogamy are not in the first couple of years. They're not in the first 2 or 3 years. That bit's fine. That bit's great. You know, it's wonderful to be with that person and you love them and you've got this great, you know, amazing feeling together and that bond. It's amazing. Fantastic, right? The difficulty is, what about when you get 10 years in? What about when you're 15 years in? I mean, Jesus. What about you're really in the jungle? What about when you're like 25 years in? Christ, 25 years in with the same person, washing their underwear, going to the bathroom in the same bathroom. I mean, like, come on, you know, like nobody can pretend that that's easy. And we have this weird, in the space, you know, because I'm on Twitter a lot, obviously on YouTube, less so Instagram because there's less conversation about this, but say Twitter and YouTube, you see a lot of dialogue about this, a lot of conversation, a lot of content created around this stuff, and it's almost like the people on there live in this like alternate reality where they've never talked to another human being who's actually been married for a long time, or they never looked around themselves, or they don't have family or friends where they've seen marriages go to shit over the course of decades or even less, right? I mean, I think most normal people who don't just live entirely online will have multiple stories, gonna get run over now, multiple stories about friends of theirs where the marriage has gone wrong, or relatives of theirs where the marriage has gone wrong. Terrible things happening where families have been pulled asunder and children have been damaged. I mean, I myself am the product of a broken marriage. That's caused damage in my own life, for myself and for other members of my family, and yet online there's almost, particularly among the traditionalists, there's almost this pretense that none of that happens and it's all great, or at least if it's not great, then it's your fault because you either just met the wrong woman or you didn't vet her properly, and you somehow failed as a man, and it's just nonsense, really, because the reality is the deck was always stacked against you. Okay, now look, again, as I say, and I've said this many times on this channel, I'm not necessarily, I'm a libertarian, right? I think that you can do what you want to do, all right? I think that you absolutely can do what you want to do. I think you should do what you want to do. So if you want to get married, you've met somebody, you think, right, okay, this is the person, I think this is this is right for me, I believe that this is going to work, or this is going to be something that is going to add pleasure and value to my life or meaning to my life, whatever, go for it, fine. I mean, don't listen to me, I'm just some idiot, right? But at the same time, it does trouble me that these voices, these traditionalist voices, are so dogmatic about this stuff when it goes against all the evidence, really, that we have, and then the real killer, because then, as I've said before, they're not going to be there to pick up the pieces, all right? If you marry Mary Jane and you have a bunch of kids and then she goes and cheats on you with the pool boy or whatever, they're not going to be there to pick up the pieces, are they? I mean, they are just some, faceless, often person on the internet they're not going to be there to pay the alimony or, help you get over the terrible grief of losing your family or any of that kind of stuff. So, you've got to think about yourself as an individual. What do you actually want? Now, the other thing about this is, so we've talked about the negative sides of society as it currently is, okay? Promiscuous, multiple opportunities for cheating, multiple opportunities for, people finding new sexual partners, being sort of tempted by that next bright, shiny thing and sort of pulled off course or whatever. So if you're looking at it from the context of, right, I want to have a long-term relationship or a marriage, that's obviously tricky because all of those things are anti, or they're not going in favor of being in that kind of long-term partnership, particularly not one that is where you're contractually obligated to the state, okay? But what it is really good for is if you want to have short-term flings and you want to have a really good time. It is the best time in human history to be a single guy, and primarily a male audience here, so I'm going to say single guy. It's the best time in history to be that guy if you want to experience a rich and varied life, okay? If you want to experience a prolific dating life where you are enjoying the sensual pleasures of life with a variety of different participants, okay? It's a wonderful time for that, because today you can now live in a way that a king or an emperor of the past couldn't have lived, because of technology, because of the affordability of travel, because of our ability to work all over the world in different places, okay? It really is a wonderful time, all right? So you've got to ask yourself, why are you so bound to an idea of conventional, stifling duty, okay? What is it about that idea that is so compelling for you? And why are you not, because look, I mean, let's also be honest, as is often said, what is guys' real modus operandi? They tend to, well, their biology would dictate that they go and spread their seed. Now, I'm not saying just be some sort of mindless, sex maniac, but at the same time, the reality is that that's going to be part of your makeup as a guy. So you've got to think to yourself, well, okay, so why am I foregoing what is my natural biological instinct in order to fulfill a societally dictated role that is the responsible, upstanding, married dude with a bunch of kids, when it's been demonstrated time and time again that model doesn't really work very well? What is it that's drawing you to a life of stifling conventionality when you could just go the other way? And because look, all of us here, right, we're only going to be on this planet for a brief period of time. Myself, I've got if I'm lucky, I might have another 30 years left, maybe. If I'm lucky, could be a lot less than that, right? So it's not like, we're talking about in a blink of an eye, I'm going to be dead, right? So do I think, okay, right, so what I'm going to do with those next, 3 decades, if I'm lucky to get that, right, I'm going to lock myself down into a stifling conventional setup that probably won't work out anyway? Or do I think, sod it, I'm just going to get a plane to Mexico and I'm going to go and lay on the beach for 6 months and I'm going to have a great time and I'm going to drink, nice, cold, icy, non-alcoholic cocktails and I'm going to meet some cute girls and I'm going to party, right? Doesn't it seem like a bit of a no-brainer? So you've got to weigh out very carefully, and I think it's about just being honest with yourself about what you want. Now, what you want may change, okay? And that's undeniable, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? It may be that I'm saying this now, and in 2 months' time or something, things change, and okay, fine. But you've got to just be very, very clear. Firstly, what do you actually want, as opposed to what is society telling you that you should want? And then secondly, you've got to be aware of the potential pitfalls of that. And I'm not saying be super, super paranoid. If you like somebody and you want to be with them, then be with them. But you've also got to have half an eye to, okay, look, these things don't always last forever. These things aren't always this kind of perfect heaven that people paint it to be. So is this actually what I want? Is this actually worth the risk? And you've got to weigh it all up very, very carefully. Because, as I say, again, none of us have a huge amount of time here. We've got, you may well be younger than me. Fantastic. You've got a few more decades on me. That's great. But ultimately, I can tell you as a guy who's getting on a bit, it goes pretty quickly. All right, it goes pretty quickly. So don't spend that time doing things that you don't really want to do just because your family thinks that you should, or even worse, some idiot on Twitter thinks that you should. Okay. Anyway, rant over. Thank you very much for watching. If you resonate with any of these, anything that's been said, stick a comment in the comment section below. Do subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Jump on my Telegram group, free Telegram group. The link is below. Got nearly 500 other guys from all around the world discussing all of this kind of stuff and dating and tactics and so on and so forth. And jump on a free call with me as well to discuss your dating life and the strategy that we can work on together. My Calendly link is below, and I'll see you again very soon. Bye-bye.